Chapter 2. Logging.
Start the chapter.
The day after. The next morning was full of sunshine and birdsong. I could smell the heat of the afternoon building. Those long, honey-like hours in late June when the earth isn't tired of its own warmth yet. But it was crisp and pleasant now.
I got up.
I sat on my bed for a moment, letting my feet dangle from it. Zero rage. I felt overwhelmed. The weight of the previous day had coiled up somewhere in my chest, and I didn't really know what to think about everything I'd learned.
And there was the dream.
And then I remembered the dream, the clearing, the animals in the night sky, waiting for me. I took a shower, ate something without really paying attention, and went out. Anya joined you. Summer morning. We were halfway through the forest when I realized we were walking toward the logging site.
Protests, activists, and answers. Well, this is an answers, but question mark?
Against the machines. Zero rage. As I walked towards the logging site, I noticed there were more people heading that way. A police car, a couple of SUVs, a TV truck, young people on bicycles, a green Land Rover from the Forest Services. When I got to the site, it felt utterly surreal, like I'd stepped onto a movie set. Anya looked around. So, what's the plan? To stop the logging? I had to understand my destiny, or I needed to find someone.
Stop the logging or understand my destiny. Hmm. That's a tough one because, yeah, I'm gonna go with the logging because I think that's my character's now understanding that is her destiny.
We have to stop this logging.
I looked around.
Spiritual path. I looked around. On my right was the ancient forest. On my left was the freshly torn clearing. Ahead of me, ruining the view, were large logging machines and a group of people arguing in their shadow. I thought the machines were sucking the life out of the air, like they were a wound, not just pieces of equipment. I looked at the clearing, I looked at the machines, or I looked at everyone.
I looked at everyone.
There were people there too. The loggers were sitting idly on the tree trunks, sharing cigarettes. The police that stood between them and a colorful group of protesters were visibly uneasy and twitchy. I saw some reporters who were clearly bored because no one was doing anything interesting. The harvesters loomed over the clearing, reeking.
I saw a familiar face among the protesters.
Kim was standing next to a vaguely military-looking white man who was arguing with Olga from the cemetery. The protesters were clearly conflicted. Maybe I should solve the conflict? They clearly needed some advice. Or zero rage, it could be fun.
I'm gonna go with maybe I could solve the conflict.
Get a point in analytical. I thrived in solving conflicts, so I went closer. One of the police officers, young and nervous, said something I didn't fully understand. I let Anya handle it, or I smiled with zero rage.
I smiled.
Zero rage option. I smiled at him and said, I don't understand, in my best Polish. He smiled back. Oh, he said, you're one of them. And let us go.
Then I noticed that someone joined us.
And then I noticed that someone used the commotion to sneak with us past the police. The girl was with disheveled, bleached out hair. Don't worry, she patted the officer on the arm. It was an awful pickup line today.
Pickup line anyway.
Oh, pickup line anyway. He recoiled. You shouldn't touch me, ma'am. I rolled my eyes, or I smiled.
I smiled.
I smiled at her and wanted to say something, but I was interrupted. Pat, some guy called from the gathering. Could you come here? I need you to show Olga that chart. She smiled, reaching into her backpack and taking out a tablet. And they're at it again, she murmured under her breath and winked at me. Coming.
We went towards the activists.
As I walked towards Kim, I heard more and more of the argument. Olga, you can't. The man was speaking in a strong German accent. Pat stood next to him with her tablet. She looked a bit amused. Do not fucking tell me what I can and cannot do, Cornell. Olga interrupted. I can, because they're destroying our mother. I can fight with all the means at my disposal, even if that means burning those harvesters to the ground. The slender, green-eyed man was standing near her. He took a few steps back, went towards one of the harvesters, turned his back on us, and pissed on the machine. Olga smirked. Ah, Daniel, you do know how to bring the point home. He looked at her confused.
Cornell raised his eyebrows.
Burn the harvesters? Cornell asked calmly. Is this draught? Olga, are you out of your mind? You know what I mean. We fight them any way we can because this is fucking war, she spat. He sighed. You've never seen real war and it shows. Nobody is shooting at us and believe me, we want it to stay that way. We need a peaceful protest.
I approached Kim.
Hey, can we talk? I asked, approaching Kim. Oh, Maya, darling. It's good to see you, they smiled. Maybe you'll be able to convince her. Oh, so I was to take a stand.
I looked at them.
I looked at both of them, Olga with her fury and passion, Cornell with his cool, professional demeanor, and shared, without any reservation, what I felt about the situation. There was a fine line to tread. It wasn't about personal victory, or I mocked them both with zero rage.
Huh. I think I'm gonna go. It wasn't about personal victory or a fine line to tread. Yeah.
I think if you kept picking zero rage options, I think you would be, New Moon. Anyway.
I got a bunch of things changed there, by the way.
Honestly, there was a lot more,
Solutions?
there were a lot more solutions than violence.
She lost her place.
Yeah.
There.
I said in a clear voice. And I think that saving the forest is more important than winning a war, or a dispute. Kim shook their head and moved forward.
I observed them curious.
You observed them curiously.
Curiously, that's the word. Yeah.
Olga, darling, you know I love you, but Cornell really knows what he's doing. Please, trust me on that one. They looked at her apologetically. Fuck off, Kim. You don't even trust me enough to come here on your own when I asked you to.
Lisa decided to say something.
Lisa looked them straight in the eye.
She had a
Peculiar.
I was going to say particular, but peculiar accent.
Kim, you want to teach me about violence. She looked them straight in the eye. About fighting oppression? Just because your boss went to what? One mission in Afghanistan? Her Polish was peculiar, kind of mellow. Cornell winced. Lisa, leave Kim alone. He didn't know what to say, and it seemed that the whole discussion would be derailed. Maybe it was for the best, or I didn't let that happen.
I don't know. I didn't let that happen.
Hey guys, the forest, I said? The logging? The protest? Olga unclenched her fists. Cornell looked back at her and chuckled softly. You almost punched me. The conversation was over, at least for the time being. Cornell, together with his cronies, walked up to the reporters while Olga went back to the group of people standing in the shadows of an old oak tree.
I looked at the forest.
Pushka is sympathetic. I looked at the Pushka. The clearing of felled trees was like a gaping, bleeding wound in the chest of a friend.
My resolve strengthened.
I came here to stop the logging, and after seeing what I'd seen, my resolve only strengthened. Yes, just like Olga said. Anya nodded, excited. What they are doing is unforgivable, and we have to fight.
I look at one group, I look at the other.
The logging site. The harvesters were dripping with black oil, and the forest stood tall, serene, and full of golden light. It looked like if it could protest itself, or protect itself. And then I looked at the felled trees, dead, limp, helpless.
Just imagined. The forest protests itself. 2, 4, 6, 8. Anyway, yeah, moving with Cornell.
In the limelight, as I approached the group, Kim waved at me. Come here. They look at me straight. They took me straight to the leader of their group, the man who was arguing with Olga. Hello, Maya, he said. I see you haven't come alone. Dear God, I can't read today.
You can't read any day. You say this every single time. Tammy has a problem reading out loud. It's the concept that her head, same with like me. It's like when you're reading at a certain pace, and because you're reading at a certain pace, when you start reading out loud, you start skipping words because the fact that you think you know what the sentence is going to say ahead, and you just are trying to do two things at once, which is reading and speaking, and one of them always gets messed up. Anyway,
he reached out with his hand. He reached out his hand. Dear God. Zero rage. He was right in the decision with Olga, or I shook it.
I'm gonna go with he was right, because yeah, I do think that it needs to be more peaceful, because you don't want to start an actual war. You know, you may get shot in the end of your story.
Hey now. Zero rage option. I heard you talking, I said earnestly, and I think you were right. Was I? I couldn't tell if he was amused or flattered. His eyes were an uncanny shade of gray. He might have been in his early 30s, I thought. Kind of a bad boy? But there was more to him.
But there was more to him, because I like the zero rage option right now.
But there was more to him than his pretty bad boy attitude. I wasn't sure what it was, but I felt it. And he knew that I knew. Cornell looked at me in the eyes. I know why you came to White Tower. The forest is under attack, and you came here to play your destined role in saving it.
He seemed to believe it, and I gained a willpower.
Max willpower! I looked at him skeptical, but he seemed to believe it. Cornell is neutral. The important question is, he looked at me intensely, do you want to help?
I had no time to answer.
But before I could answer, I heard a commotion and turned around. The reporters were coming our way, but their cameras were switched off and pointed to the ground. Why weren't they filming? I had a bad feeling about this, or zero rage. I had an idea. increasing your cunning. I ignore them and turn back to Cornell. There was a way we could use the media, or the media needed something spectacular.
I think I'm gonna go with the way that we could use it.
I think we should spin the media, I said. Make the headlines. That's the plan. He nodded and turned towards the reporters. So? He asked. There was a hint of impatience in his voice. The reporter shook his head and grimaced. Sorry, everyone. We can't do anything. We're not allowed to cover what's going on here. What did they mean? Plus a rage. Suddenly I understood. Or I deflated.
I'm gonna go with because I think deflated just basically is like I give up. Where what do they mean? I don't want to go with anything that gives me rage. So the middle one does seem like I think I could work with it.
Then it hit me. The police weren't there to protect the protesters or the press. Yeah, it must be hard to do your job when the police is watching your every step. It should be R. I said, and they nodded. Uh, there was a moment of tense silence.
And then it all came together.
Suddenly, I understood the dream. That was the moment I was destined to intervene. The protest was too quiet, they needed inspiration, or I just needed to make the reporters understand, or I could still use the reporters.
I think I could. I'm going with it. I think I could still use the reporters because if I do it this, I think I start getting too physical, and I'm trying to avoid that.
Keep talking. I looked at the protesters. Their frustration was getting to me, plus one rage. They didn't have any real pain. Plan. Pain. They were as lost as I was.
I'm going to go with this one. I think they don't have a real plan. Kind of try being a hero or leader.
They were a ragtag bunch thrown together by circumstances without a real plan or clear purpose. I looked around, I put my hands in my pockets, and wandered towards the journalists. The cops were scared, I just wanted to be heard, or zero rage, and I asked for a cigarette.
I think I just want to be heard. Yeah.
Increase in spirit.
And I got achievement. Networking!
You know you're not recording, I said. But I wanted to tell you this protest is important. There aren't many places like this left in the world. The forest is worth so much more than the wood. One of them sighed. Privately, I understand you, but I'm here to work. Unspectacular as it was, I managed to connect.
I acted on it.
Does it always look like this? I asked. I mean, is it an everyday situation that you can't report? No, answered one of them. He was tall, in his 30s. There was a few glances towards him, almost a flash of warning, but it was too late. So why weren't they filming, or lose one willpower? But why were they in White Tower at all?
I'm going to go with the lose willpower to do this then.
Lost my spot.
Wait.
Wait, so why are you here at all? I asked, and then it hit me. You were sent here to find some dirt on the activists to get something that would compromise the protests. They looked at one another, suddenly unsure of what to say. Then I heard shouts as Olga and her protesters clashed with the police, and the cameramen grabbed their gear and ran towards the action. Remember, we want the aggressive ones, shouted one of the reporters. I could see the logo of the national TV station on his camera.
Soon we were alone.
Fuck, Cornell swore as he threw his thermal cup at the ground. It bounced, spilling hot coffee everywhere. Someone grabbed me by my shoulder. I turned around and saw Kim. This is when you exit the scene. They turned me around and gently but firmly pushed me away. We'll be in touch, they whispered. The ugly truth. When I was on the road to the village and nobody could see me, I doubled over and vomited. I always felt violently sick when there was too much to process at once. In the whole commotion, I lost Anya from my sight. I was alone.
Or so I thought.
The press is neutral. Hey, are you all right? The voice behind me said, and I jumped. A woman was walking toward me. I said nothing with rage gain. I was fine, or it was too much.
I think it was too much. That's what that.
It was too much, I whispered. All of that. We walked slowly towards the village.
We talked.
I learned that she was an independent German reporter who had come here about a month ago. Her name was Erica. So, why are you protesting the logging? She asked after a few minutes of small talk. For personal reasons. Zero rage option is we had to save the Pushka, or honestly, I had no idea.
I'm gonna go with we had to save the Pushka.
Zero rage option. I think the Pushka is unique, and when I saw how many trees they've cut in just one afternoon, it had broke my heart, I said, still shaken by the sheer number of fallen trees. I have to do whatever I can to save the forest. I looked at her, and why are you asking?
She looked at me with renowned interest.
Do you know why they are cutting down the trees? She asked back. Because you do know the logging is done by a government company, the state forests. The fuckers? But why? Or I had no idea.
I'm gonna go with but why.
But why are they doing this? I wasn't sure if I understood. Shouldn't the state forest take care of the forest? Shouldn't oh my goodness! Shouldn't the forest take care?
Should the state forests
take care that the forest was healthy? I'm also trying to wrestle with Pumpkin, who's trying to get on my lap.
Erica reached for her notebook.
It all started with spruce bark beetles. Erica looked into her notes and started explaining the whole situation. That year, the beetles' infestation was of catastrophic proportions, and the foresters decided that the only way to stop it and save the rest of the forest was to cut down as many infested trees as fast as possible. Was cutting down the trees necessary? But was the logging legal, or couldn't they just remove the dead trees?
Couldn't they just remove the dead trees? I think is what we're going to.
Maybe if they removed the dead trees, the infestation wouldn't spread. I tried to find a solution. That might do that, or they might do that, but the dead trees are what make the forest unique, Erica smiled. They are 20 times more species living on a dead tree, spruce tree, than on a live one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with was cutting it down necessary.
Is cutting down trees the only way to stop the infestation? I asked, confused. Their foresters state that this is the only way, she said. Some biologists argue that they are cutting wrong trees and doing it too late to change anything.
Okay, and then last option.
But is the logging legal? I wanted to know. Opinions differ, but the massive logging in the UNESCO listed this area might be illegal. Listed area might be illegal, Erica answered.
Did they have to intervene at all?
Couldn't they just leave the Pushka alone and let nature take its course, I asked. That's one of the options, Erica admitted. But there's a drought and no one is sure if the forest would survive on its own. Zero rage. It was a complex situation, but that didn't mean that I should step back. And I felt that Erica was deliberately playing the devil's advocate. Zero rage. I needed advice, or I tried to understand her point of view using a willpower.
That word that you keep saying, drought, is it supposed to be drought?
I think so.
Okay. So now that they've used it this many times, it sounds like that's the word. It's just, do I want to use this willpower on this? Yeah, let's go with it.
The press is sympathetic. I see that you are trying to show me the whole picture, and I appreciate it, I sighed. I just hoped there would have been an easier answer, or be an easy answer. I'm just doing my job, Erica shrugged, and I described all aspects of the situation to you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do.
It was a tough decision.
I shook my head. Why did the situation have to be so complex? At least I was sure they were cutting down the trees and the Pushka needed my help. Spiritual option is I asked her to stop and listen, or what else could I do?
I'm going to go with the spiritual option.
Spiritual option. Stop for a moment and just listen, I asked Erica. We stood there listening to the birds and the wind in the trees. I breathed in the smell of the forest. We felt the sun on our faces. That's why I cannot let them cut down the trees, I said. She looked skeptical. You're not the only one feeling helpless, she sighed. You are, so don't let the complexity of the situation stop you. Life is always complex, and yet we carry on. I didn't want to listen, plus one rage. So what was right and what was wrong, or I said nothing.
So what was right and what was wrong? Let's go with that.
So what should I do when I feel that something is wrong? I asked, exasperated. Do you believe that people can be evil? She asked back. Some people were bad, or we could do bad things for sure.
I do think that some people are just bad, so let's go with that.
Some are for sure, I shrugged. But isn't that too easy an explanation? I said nothing. What's the matter? She asked. I admitted my helplessness, or zero rage. I shared my fear.
I shared my fears.
Zero rage option. Something wasn't right with the whole situation. I didn't know what it was, and that scared me. I took a deep breath, and then I remembered what Cornell had said.
All that mystical stuff. I don't remember him saying anything about mystical stuff, but because I don't think we talked to him about that.
And they said that I'm destined to save the day. I shook my head. It's a lot to take in, and there was that foul smell back there. She looked at me with a weird expression. What smell? She asked.
How come she didn't smell it?
Zero rage. You didn't smell it? The harvesters reek of something like meat that's been rotting in acid, only worse. I couldn't even find the words to describe it, but the memory of the foulness still clutching to the back of my throat, swimming in my sinuses. I know what you're talking about, she answered slowly, but I don't think everyone can smell it. I looked at her and raised my eyebrow questioningly.
Her eyes.
Her eyes.
Her eyes. Oh, I'm from Luther Press!
Nice. There was sympathy in her eyes. You'll learn in your own time if you should if you stay here long enough. She said clearly and wanted to drop the topic. What did she mean, or I let it go?
I let it go. 'Cause I'm not gonna push it.
And go away, pumpkin. I shrugged. Cryptic remarks didn't or never did anything for me. The situation was complicated enough as it was. I just hoped I hadn't made things worse.
We walked on in silence.
Time to regroup. Anya came back soon after me. I lost sight of you, she said apologetically. I'm glad you made it back in one piece. So, how was your day? Anya asked. I had a chat with the reporters. I learned a lot. I met a lot of new people, or I shrugged.
Well, I think this is one of the ones where I can answer multiple times. So let's start from the top and work our way down.
I had a nice chat with the reporters, I grinned, and learned a thing or two. Anya frowned. I heard that you can't trust them. I never said I did, I winked.
I learned a lot.
Did you know that the government supported the logging even when it was illegal? I shared my dismay. Anya just nodded solemnly. Yeah, I've read about it. Why didn't you tell me? Well, you had a lot going on, she shrugged.
I met a lot of new people.
I met some very interesting people, I said, still excited. Yeah, they looked like a colorful bunch, Anya grinned. Maybe you could introduce me later. They are just they sure are passionate. They argue between themselves more than they argue with the loggers, I added.
It was all I wanted to share. That's all I had. I shared everything.
I shrugged. Just another day in White Tower. We sat for a while in silence. You know, more to see in than there's more to see here than White Tower, Anya said from over her travel guide. Uh, Pagorzelce, Udi, Teramiski, Sri. There's something interesting in every village, an open-air museum, some kind of folk university, the bison. Maybe you'd like to see something more than the logging. I couldn't see everything, or maybe later with a zero rage option.
Um, maybe later? Question mark.
I'd love to see it all, I sighed. And I'll do that as soon as the situation with the Pushka is resolved. And how's the search for your roots going? Anya couldn't stay silent for long. I shared what I'd learned, or it wasn't something I wanted to discuss.
I thought she's been here this entire time with me.
I don't think she heard some of the private conversations you've had with
Oh,
Kim and Lisa.
I'll share what I've learned.
They say that I'm some sort of the chosen one, I said. They keep telling me that there's some cryptic destiny I have to fulfill. Wow, Anya looked impressed. Honestly, I'm not sure what to think, but if you need something, just let me know.
I was tired.
I just sat there, looking through the window. The day'd been full on, and I was exhausted.
I didn't notice when I fell asleep.
I can do anything. It's quiet now, yet I know deep down inside that something isn't right. I run, gain a rage, I keep walking, or I sneak.
I keep walking. I'm not gonna go the cunning route.
I'm walking through the forest to the logging site. It's getting dark. I see the light seeps away as though there are millions of tiny punch holes in the sky through which it can escape. And then the darkness starts to pour in. I welcome the darkness, or I know what I will see.
I know what I'll see. Let's go with that.
And I see bodies strewn across the ground, bloodied, maimed, and are with their limbs torn from destroyed torsos. I can see them. Some of them are still alive, still struggling for air, still trying to live. They are all trees, fallen trees, still alive, still struggling for air. And there's the stench. I see movements in the darkness, but I'm not alone.
Let's go with that one.
The monsters are coming. They have long skeletal arms. They are wrapped in glistening black intestines, and each arm has a wide, gaping mandible full of whirling blades. They snap at me blindly. But I am not alone. Spiritual. I can feel the forest by my side. Some of my new friends have horns. Some have antlers. Their eyes shine in the dark, and they are ready. They are furious. I can feel their ancient anger merge with mine.
I howl ancient oaths and gain a will.
I howl ancient oaths. I invoke the moon. I spill blood. The spirit of the forest move, and I am with them, biting off heads and tearing off limbs. We are a nightmare come true.
But then I woke up. Ba, ba, ba.
I gasped and bolted upright. Zero rage. I was alone. The sun was setting, and in the deep red light, the room looked like it was bathed in blood. My pillow and duvet were on the ground, and I was sweating bullets. I looked at my legs. When did they become so hairy? I could have sworn I shaved them this morning.